most people that I've interacted with that are in romantic relationships have a challenge opening up their heart fully. And I believe that comes with them fully accepting themselves first and knowing they're whole and complete and they don't need anybody. They choose people. So they tend to hide things that they are unhappy or insecure about themselves from their partner because they themselves can't accept it. And if they can't accept it, how the hell is their partner going to accept it and love them?
Scott, one of the things that I immediately noticed about you is you are very unique. I see videos of you walking in like a pink reflective thong and nothing else, like down the road, dancing, but it's just looking like you're fully in your not giving a fuck.
I had what I thought was the perfect life. I had a beautiful partner, I had a wonderful community, and my business was going well, but I just wasn't really feeling fulfilled. I ended up having an affair with a man while I was in my marriage.
Scott Holliday is a coach working with men and also with couples in relationships. And one of the things I really love about Scott is his authenticity, which is largely a big part of his message that he puts out there. Now, what you'll find is that some people offer really good explanations about understandings and concepts. And some people can demonstrate it through the embodiment and actually being the thing they're talking about. And what I really love about Scott is, whilst he gives good explanations on ideas and understandings, he really does embody it through being authentic in a way that I actually haven't seen too many times before. And even as we're talking in the conversation, you can see there's this real kind of ease and gentleness with himself for being exactly how he is, and the fact that he's actually still on his journey of evolution and growth. And I actually think it's really endearing. Now, we actually ended up having that conversation for over an hour and a half. So I decided to make this conversation with Scott a two-part episode. So this is part one, all about authenticity and how to show up as your unique self. And part two is all about sex and relationships. I hope you enjoy. Before we start, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to find Scott, the links are going to be in the description for that. All right, let's get into it. Scott Holliday.
Sabri, hello.
We had our chat like 10 days ago, maybe as a pre-conversation leading up to this. And immediately when I came off that call, I just felt full. I felt full from our conversation energetically. It was so beautiful. And when sometimes you have a conversation with someone and you just come away thinking, oh yeah, that's one of my people.
Yeah, I felt very similarly. I was like, well, if I'm not careful, I could talk to this guy all day long. I have such a fascination for you and your work. So I felt very grateful when you reached out to me and we set up a call and then the podcast here. I'm really excited to be on today. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I woke up this morning excited knowing that I had this. For the listeners that might not be familiar with yourself, Scott, could you give us just a little overview of who Scott Holliday
Oh
is?
my, where to start? There's so much learning I've done about myself the past couple of years and every day that it's like, where do I even begin? I think I'll start here. Born in Midwest America, Missouri, so about right smack dab in the middle of the United States. I was born in um, I'd say it's a very loving family, but a lot of unconscious generational trauma stuff that helped form me in my life. I'm very grateful for it. My mom and dad were very sexual people. My mom left the family at the age of 7, and that caused a huge trauma or wound for me around women. And I was raised by my dad, and he did the best he could with what he had. And he guided me really well for where he was at. And I went through a life of infidelity in my partnerships because I didn't feel safe with women, but I was very sexually expressed. And then a couple of years ago, I had a really big awakening. So I had what I thought I had what I thought everyone wanted, or I had what I thought was the perfect life. I had a beautiful partner, I had a wonderful community, and my business was going well, but I just wasn't really feeling fulfilled. And my partner finally found out about my infidelity, and um, I had some real big struggles there, and we broke up, and I thought I lost my world. I thought I lost my friend groups. I was so ashamed of what I had done. Um, but fortunately, I had a lot of people reach out and help me through this process. I had to stop and ask myself some really difficult questions at the time. You know, like inside, I had to answer them honestly. Like, why did I keep creating this loop and this pattern of infidelity? Why wasn't I fitting into the mold of what society, expects or is conditioned or is, I've been conditioned or chosen to be conditioned. I don't like to speak in a victim mentality, so I'm not saying society conditioned me, but the way that I allowed myself to be conditioned over time, to have this monogamy, to have certain aspects of relationships. And I wasn't being honest with myself. So I finally started doing that, and um, I'd always been a coach, for bodybuilding and fitness. I was a really prolific bodybuilder, at the amateur level, almost went professional, and so I had this coaching background. So as I started to learn more about myself, I started to shift my coaching into more of a mentorship, because I saw every time I learned something, I keep that and I keep that lesson that I learned by passing along to others. So my coaching evolves and over the years. So now I've taken more of a mentorship role, and during that time when I had that big transitionary period of like learning about myself and my sexuality and the way that I operated my relationships from platonic to romantic, I started I created a men's group, and I did that for a couple years until I started moving on and progressing from it. So I created a men's group called Mantality, Masculine Mentality. It was really fitting for me at the time. I learned a lot about myself through others, and then I started progressing, and I went through one. I went through a relationship. It was the first one where I showed up fully expressed, holding my boundaries, and as that one didn't reciprocate its value, and I saw the other partner, my partner, she wasn't fully invested in the relationship as then I chose to break away from it. And that was last year, around this time last year, where I broke away from that relationship. It was the first time in a relationship where I was like, you know what, I don't want to be with this person. Um, and the reason why I don't, I love that person fully and I love myself fully. The reason I don't is uh, I started relinquishing some of my values. I started like being on social media a little bit longer. I wanted to communicating and flirting with others, and I already gave myself my word. I'm not going to be unfaithful, and I'm going to be my word. I'm going to be honest. So I started seeing that happen in my heart. My heart space was starting to close up with this person. I had to have a serious conversation with her. I said, "Hey, I love you and I love me, but this relationship is draining me." So it was the first time in my life that I spoke up, instead of like sabotaging my romantic relationships to infidelity. I was like, I can't dishonor myself anymore. So once I did that, it was a really difficult. It was a really difficult point in my life because it was the first time and it was very scary. But when I was able to do that, I opened my heart up to her. I told her what was going on, and I told her what I wouldn't tolerate for myself anymore. And then it created a space where we could both mourn the death of our relationship, the passing of it. And in that, I was able to access some emotions that I hadn't been able to access before. I had some deep crying because I was actually, uh, present and conscious for the breakup of the relationship. So I was crying so hard while holding her one night. I was like, when was the last time I cried this hard? And I remembered, well, the last time I cried this hard was the time after my mom left, and I was in such deep despair as a young boy. Like, why did this happen? Trying to make sense of it. And that's whenever I started repressing those emotions, saying, I'm not going to let my mom make me cry anymore. So I went back to that time, kind of like time traveling through emotions, like somatically. And I brought the adult version of Scott, who had done a lot of healing with his mother. And I had a conversation with little Scott. I said, hey, you're perfectly fine. Your mom had to do that. She had to leave because she needed space. She was doing that. She was a woman, and I had spent so many years looking at her as a mother that I forgot to look at her as a human being. So I gave a lot of grace and forgiveness, which helped heal the younger version of myself. And then shortly after the end of that relationship, I ran into my soulmate, my partner, Liv. She gives me a reason to live. Well, I give myself a reason to live, but I like to say that to her is really sweet. It's a very wonderful co-creative conscious relationship. So with the first date I had with Liv, I said, you know what, screw it. I'm not messing around with my dating anymore. I'm like, I'm full and complete. I'm whole and complete. I don't need anybody to fulfill my life. but I sure would enjoy some company. So our first date, I said, here's all of me. Here's my deepest, darkest shames. Here's my truths. Here's my values. And I opened up all those things so I could be seen clearly. So at the very start of it, I started what, as opposed to me dating someone for a month or 2 months or 3 months in and waiting to tell them, my deep dark secrets and shames and things that I'm not proud of and all that stuff. So it was like magical because when I talk about magic, I see magic as just collapsing time. So I collapse a bunch of times. So I do magic every day whenever I feel a fear or an insecurity or something that's inhibiting me from presence with a person I love. I collapse the time by just shining a big bright light on any of those fears. It's like, here's my fears, here's me, and then it helps. It really facilitates a connection with me and those around me, and it also calls other people into their greatness. It's like, oh, if Scott's going to be vulnerable and courageous and talk about what he's worried about or what his fears are, and be truthful and transparent, then it calls them into being the same for me. So it raises the vibrations of myself and those around me, and it's been probably beneficial in my life. I'm also what I consider myself is very authentic of my expression. That's what I'm known for in my community. Is Scott's going to be Scott. I'm very loving, and I'm a student of life. So I'll learn from a tree, or I'll learn from someone who's younger than me, or I'll learn from you. It's one of the most powerful things that one of the most powerful characteristics about myself is being a really good student of life. So yeah. Oh, and then humility. I'm really humble. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I, I, I appreciate everyone, and I see myself as an expression of God or Source, and I see everyone else and everything else around me as an expression of God and Source. So it gives a great dynamic of me feeling like I'm very powerful and I'm very unique, but I also respect others because they are too. So I think that encapsulates a little bit of me. I tried doing that as brief as possible, but there's so much I could talk about. Thank you for asking.
And we're going to get into it for sure. Scott, one of the things that I immediately noticed about you is you are very unique.
Oh,
And I think part of your uniqueness is the authenticity and how much you seem comfortable showing up as you, regardless of how much that doesn't fit into the societal boxes. And when I say that, if we take like your physical stature, your build, how you look, clearly, I've spent years bodybuilding. You mentioned that you were in the Marines for 10 years. And then I see videos of you walking in like a pink reflective thong and nothing else, like down the road, dancing. But it's just looking like you're fully in your not giving a fuck and just being you. And I love that. I love that because that is something that I think most people are terrified of doing. So, what I'm curious about is, were you always comfortable in showing up in that full expression of who you are? Or has that been the result of the work you've been putting in?
oh, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think I've been asked that one before. Um, I've always inherently been my expression, my full authentic expression. Well, not all, full authentic expression, but I've always had a big chunk of me that's been like that, and I credit that a lot to my father. No matter what um, no matter what bullshit I've had to put up with uh, in that relationship, he's always come to me and fortified his love in me, and he's never been scared to tell me that he loves me and I'm the most important thing in the world to him. So I credit a lot that to him, and I let him know that because I freaking appreciate it because I think it gave me the foundation just to be me because I know that no matter what happens in this world, my dad's got my back. So at the early stages of my life, that was definitely huge for me. And one thing that I think that I kind of look back and I wonder if intuitively I knew I desired to have a bigger frame because I had a lot of feminine qualities to me. And I think in it, subconsciously, I knew that I needed to protect myself, at least like in a visual way, because a lot of the gestures and characteristics and expression I have is very feminine. and I felt like that would be a good way to protect myself is to grow a bigger stature. So another thing that came along after that is I really enjoyed having a bodybuilding physique, but also express myself in a very open and loving way. Because when I did that and I moved through life, I felt like I was a walking contrast or lesson for those around me. So people would often come see me, and their first impression was like, okay, intimidating big guy, he's probably a meathead or something. But then I would open my mouth or just show up in a bunch of kind and in my kindness, and I felt like that'd be a great way to get people without me even making a lesson for them to take a step back after an interaction with me and say, "Huh, uh, I'm going to rethink my uh, prejudice or judgments or assumptions on people by the way they look," because it was very unexpected when I experienced that with Scott. Now, the more I learn about myself throughout my awakening and my journey to enlightenment that never ends, the more I learn about myself, the more my authentic expression comes out. uh, and I really enjoy. Now I'll tell you what, I have to be careful though, because sometimes I shine that light so bright, I can I can scare people away, or um, what I say whenever I shine my bright light, it can cast shadows. If that makes sense, shadows that people feel within themselves, insecurities or things like that. So I've learned that I have to, that I it's beneficial for me to maximize my message, to meet people where they're at and not just show up to like we went to a couples retreat. My partner and I went to a couples retreat last weekend, and to not just show up in a thong out there and you know, I want to be able to like connect with people and not just push them away. I don't want to be a bull in a china shop, you know. I want to take it easy. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I imagine that I think sometimes when we shine our light very brightly, and especially if you're someone with a lot of character, which from what I can see of your online presence, you seem to have bags of, and from the times that we've spoke so far. And I think sometimes when you do that, it can actually some people can find it uncomfortable because it can actually highlight what they reject in themselves. And actually, someone has been like fully in their expression of who they are. For someone that isn't comfortable with that and the things that they reject and judge in themselves, when you shine that so brightly, maybe sometimes people are doing that actually. They're kind of like maybe rejecting the elements of you that they do reject in themselves because you're shining the light on their shadow.
Yeah, absolutely. That was pretty much the intention I meant by the phrase earlier. Like it's usually a reflection. It's usually their own shadow that they're fearing, and I've seen that a lot in my social media posts. And it really helps me not take things personally if I post something and someone will pass a judgment or say something negative. I'll realize, or the the understanding that I have from my life experiences is what they're saying, their statement, their negative judgment or whatever it is simply a reflection on how they feel about themselves. So I have so much empathy and compassion for them. So I don't attack back. I either don't respond or I'll maybe give a reflection of my own and say, hey, this might be indicative of something you're going through. Maybe that's something you would like to have a conversation with yourself about and be introspective. Because I know for me, if I see something on social media, if I see something out in the world and it triggers me, I don't play victim of whatever triggered me. I go inside myself. I say, Scott, where's the insecurity? Why are you being triggered by this? Unless it's like an actual physical threat or something like that. Like why are you feeling like this is agitating you? Why do you feel like? And then I start going through the process. And there's something there to heal for me. So yeah, I hear you. It can cast a shadow on other people's insecurities, but if it does, and they're willing to talk to me, I hold space for it, you know, and walk them through it if I can.
Yeah, and of course the other side of that is there's going to be a huge amount of people that see you doing what you do, the way that you show up, and it's almost gives them a green light to say, oh, okay, maybe I can do that too, because especially because you've got like a good size following on your Instagram, and I think it's just nice to see that you do show up the way you do, and people clearly follow you for a reason. And I think that's probably a big part of it, is that authenticity. And again, not feeling the need to have to fit into a certain box. And, if we think what you said about the physical stature, and some people might assume meathead. And I think that's sometimes because we can actually put ourselves in a box where we say, okay, well, if I want to look like this, then I have to act this way because that's congruent. So I think there's something really nice about someone showing up that says, no, no, I'm Scott, which is a recognition of you are completely unique, of which of course we all are, but then actually giving yourself the permission to be that.
Oh, you're hitting on some. It's almost like you've been reading my post or something, because that's one of the things that are my intention and hopefully my impact is being my unique, authentic expression, giving other people the permission to do the same. Because then we have a lot of interesting people out there, and the world is often much healthier because when people or whenever if I'll speak from my statements, but whenever I repress something, an emotion or a desire, if I repress it or suppress it, then it often is expressed in very toxic ways. So if we can break these molds and help people, give them permission to express in their unique ways and not be shameful of their desires. I have the desire to do this. I'm not attached to the outcome, but I really want to do this. I have those desires often whenever I'm with my partner and we have like a girlfriend over. I'll state, hey, in order for me to stay present in the conversation with everybody, I got to speak my desire. I have a sexual attraction here, and I'm not attached to me having a sexual interaction with this person, but I need to get it off my chest. And I create a very safe, loving container where people will say, "Hey, that sounds good to me," or "Hey, not right now." I'm like, cool, because I prioritize the connection over the actual physical interaction. And everyone knows, okay, Scott, he's not. I feel very comfortable around Scott because he's going to speak his mind. He's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind, even if it's uncomfortable for him. And I do this
Mm.
frequently. So like, hey, this is uncomfortable, but I got to say it, so I get it out. So then there's a huge level or layer of trust that people have with me because they know that I'm not going to hide anything from them.
Do you think to the capacity in which you can give yourself that space to express how you feel also gives almost an equal reflection of your ability to hear other people and for them to
Uh,
be who they are?
yeah, so I've noticed for myself that the deeper I love myself and have compassion and understanding of who I am, the more I can relate to others and empathize with them. So it's been tremendous in not only my friendships but especially my romantic relationship. I've gotten through depths in the past year with my partner, depths so deep that I hadn't even had that level of connection with a ex-wife I had with for 4 years. After 2 or 3 months of this relationship, of just being completely transparent and honest with each other, and I mean this in the sense of like my honesty and my truth to my partner is more important than the relationship itself. So I have a tier system of my priorities: Scott's body health, his physical, mental body health, his full expression, and anything that I give my word to. And then after that is my sacred union, my partnership. So the fact that I choose myself um, always it makes it to where my partner knows all of me. And for her to unconditionally love all of me, she needs to know all of me. So I keep any truth from her, then she's not truly loving all of me. And I can't fully receive if she says, "Hey Scott, I love you so much. I love all of you." It's like, well, I haven't told you this. You need to know everything about me. Um, radical honesty. And so I let her know everything about me so that when she loves me, she fully loves me. I think I got a little tangent there, but yeah, I think that's right. So yeah, so the deeper I love myself, the deeper my love for others goes. Um, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that Dr. Gaffney talks about is love being a perception, and it's I see you. And one of the things that came up in our conversation was, you know, I kind of had the recognition that if I don't allow myself to be seen, I'm actually not allowing myself to be loved. Because if you like to your point, what you just said there, if you can't see me in my entirety, you, as much as you might want to love me in my entirety, you actually can't because I'm not being seen. I'm not showing myself.
Yes. Yeah, intimacy. Into you, you see me, or something like that. Into me, you see. Yeah, that's what I say, intimacy. And I learned that the hard way. I banged my head against the brick wall for a long time because I hid my desires from my partners, and it caused this layer of distrust and resentment. Energetically, it wasn't always that they caught me in a lie, but they could feel I wasn't present. And yeah, I totally agree with Dr. Gaffney.
How common do you think that is that people in their relationships do suppress or hide things like, for example, desires and some of the things that you've already touched on? How common do you think that is?
Ooh, I actually, yeah, this is just coming from my experience and worldview, people I've interacted with. The vibrations of people and the frequencies I've interacted with, it's extremely common, and it's unfortunate. Now, as I progress in my life and I make new connections, and my vibration increases, I'm meeting new people and new networks. And these newer networks, uh, the standards that I thought are, oh, this is great. Look at how great I'm doing. It's the actual base standard for all these conscious relationships. So I believe I'm shifting out of some vibrational frequencies of Earth that some people are in into new ones. So it's a very exciting experience. But as of right now, most people that I've interacted with that are in romantic relationships have a challenge opening up their heart fully. And I believe that comes with them fully accepting themselves first and knowing they're whole and complete, and they don't need anybody. They choose people. So they tend to hide things that they are unhappy or insecure about themselves from their partner because they themselves can't accept it. And if they can't accept it, how the hell is their partner going to accept it and love them? And it just festers and grows. So it's really common. And that's actually a lot of the work that we do, my partner and I do with intimacy. We just spent about a week in Florida in a full immersion with a couple, and we spent every day with them, and we finally got them to one of the partners to have a fully transparent conversation about what his desires are, what does he wants and standards in his relationship. And that was a breakthrough conversation because the other person was like, I didn't even know this. I did not know that this was bothering you like that. I did not, because they were speaking very ambiguously, but we want to speak honestly and specific. Hey, this is what's affecting me. Or this is what is my problem is. So we had some breakthrough conversations, and we're able to get them to open up and speak their desires. And after that, now both people are clearly communicating. They understand expectations, boundaries, and the relationship is flourishing. So yeah, huge.
Do you think that that's more common for people that have experienced either um, either rejection in who they are, or even more so for people that have experienced some type of abandonment? Do you think there's a big fear of, if I fully open up about me, do you think there's like a big fear around that person won't accept and they'll leave?
Yeah, I believe a lot of this stems from um, parental trauma, parental wounds. I believe that all like
Yeah.
all the romantic relationship stuff that definitely stems from there and how they were taught how to love. It's the first place we're taught how to love is from our parents or parental units, whoever they may be. And if that's
Yeah.
damaged, then there's probably a lot of work to be done. The way that I see this, Sabri, is that the human species in a totality is going through an evolution of love. Just like Dr. Gaffney talks, we're going from Homo sapiens to Homo amor. So love humans, yeah, right? I love that when you mentioned that. And the faster and more efficient that we get familiarized with love and alchemizing low vibration emotions like guilt, shame, sadness, anger, things like that, into love and joy, the quicker that we assimilate to that, the brighter our human species future will look. And yeah, it's abandonment, rejection, yes, but I believe that if we want to get to the root of it, it's generational traumas. As we evolved over the past few millennia, um, we're working through that. That's something we're working through, and it takes time. And we can make a huge impact this generation, the coming generations, with all of the access to information and spreading truth and love. As we heal that, we'll heal our psyches, we'll heal our emotional being, and then here soon we'll have, right now we have, well, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but yes, we'll start producing more people who are aligned with love, uh, less fear based. Like honestly, whenever I get into any choice in my life, as long as I'm staying conscious, I'm like, okay, here's a choice point. Um, there's like two choices essentially, or there's two ways to make a choice: through a fear or through love. And the more I've chosen through love, whatever the decision that needs to be made, the more I choose love, the higher quality my life becomes. Yeah. Ah,
Do you, do you think that a lot of people treat love as a like a scarce commodity and they have to be careful who they give it to?
yes. Yes. I haven't heard a question like that before, but yeah, I believe that. Um, yeah, I believe that people treat it as a scarce commodity, like it's something precious to hold on to, like precious gold. And if I give it away, I lose it. But I see love as an energy flow. If we hold on to it, we're constricting the flow of it. But if we freely give it without expectations of receiving it back, we end up getting an abundance back. Or I end up getting an abundance. Whenever I do that, I get an abundance back. Yeah.
You know, one of the big realizations for me at one point, which was, I think love is actually a state of being which we enter. We enter into a state of being love, not not even giving it. I think when we access that state, and I think sometimes we might meet that person, that our beloved, where when we're around them, something happens where we actually feel ourselves shift into the state of being love. And I think when you access that, you realize, no, actually, when I am love, it's not something that I have to be careful. Like, who do I give this to? When I am love, I am love. I can be love for everybody. I can be love for the person that I've just met, and I can be love for them. And I think a lot of people think it's something that we give and receive, like there's a well and all the well's running dry. And I think that might be because that's the way in which they've experienced love growing up. Like it's something that's given to them, and sometimes it hasn't been given to them. And it's almost like a complete shift of paradigms of what love is. And on like 2 days ago, I was invited to be a guest at it was a black belt grading weekend. It was a 3-day event, and this martial arts school, my friend Rob, who owns it, they do a lot of the deeper work. And day one of the 3-day black belt grading is inner work, and they have to do a speech at the front, and they talk about what like their shadows and their triggers. And it was really beautiful because there was people as young as 12 years old talking, having awareness of what their shadow is and what their triggers are, up to adults. And one of the things that they did there, they did like this heart opening meditation, and then people had to go just hug each other, like try and hug everyone in the room. But it was to hold until you felt the body almost drop in. And I was involved in that, I'd say to some people like, hug and like, I love you, brother. And you could see that some people, like, there was a couple where it's like, oh, I don't know how to take that. And then there was some where you see they were in it and they were like, I love you
Yeah.
too. And you could see this, like, there was like the illusion of separateness
Yes.
was just fading away, and realizing it almost seemed like people had the heart open and they realized that, yeah, love is something that we are. But also, even if we do consider it as something we can give and receive, like, why wouldn't I love you? Why wouldn't I want to do that? Because it's such a beautiful thing to be able to just, like, imagine if we all existed in that way as a baseline
Yes.
of we operate from love.
Yeah. Okay. I hear. Yeah. That's a lot of great points there. I believe that some people are in their minds and they're not feeling safe to be in their body. So they live in their minds where a lot of the past, this old stories of the past, or fears of the future, can inhibit them from being present in their body. If I just live in the now and I just check on myself, like, okay, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm breathing. If I get in the very present moment, all my needs are met. Like, yeah, so I always can come back to like an unlimited source of love within myself because I can create it. We're all power. I see us all as powerful creators, so we can choose and create love at any time that we want, or we can choose pain and misery. And I believe a lot of people are stuck at choosing pain and misery. There's been many times where I felt frustrated in a situation with my partner, with my friends, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I go in these stories, or what if I say this and they'll say that, and then, or what about the past and they treat me like this? But if I just stop with those things and I get really present in the moment, I say, what is it that you want to create, Scott? What experience do you want to have? I say, I want love. I want joy. I want connection. I want truth and transparency. Then in that moment, I can break the chains of the future, the past, and I can show up and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what I want to create. Are you on board? Yes. Okay, fuck yeah, let's go. No. Okay, I'm gonna have to love you from a distance and take a step back. Uh, and the more I, like I said, like I was talking about earlier, loving myself deeply, the more I love myself and understand the intricacies, um, I see I see everyone else easier because I can empathize and relate to them. So then it helps me create. It's easier for me to say I love you to a stranger now because I see us all as the same consciousness, but just experiencing different avatars, experiencing different lives. If my consciousness was put into yours, uh, I there's likelihood that I could have a lot of the same choices and at the same place as you because you have those experiences. So I have a lot of empathy for others and compassion. Yeah, I'm very fortunate for the area I grew up in, the time I grew up in. I'm very fortunate and grateful for that. So yeah,
That self-love that you spoke about has arriving at that place, is it your spiritual journey that has got you there?
my spiritual journey has definitely enhanced it. The self love. Um, I've had a lot of confidence and self love, like from the beginning, like when my father uh, and my other family members had really edified me growing up. But some of it had been a struggle, especially around sexuality, um, to have self love because the time and place that I grew up, the expectations for how to show up in a romantic partnership just didn't feel authentic to me. And I felt an abundance of love within me and an abundance of creative and sexual energy. So I could, I felt the ability to have a committed partner and show up for that and say, hey, this is the partner I'm choosing. But I'd have desires, the way I show love is very kinetic, it's very physical. I'm very huggy. I give hugs, massages, and then I'm also I love to make love. So I've learned how to express that in healthy ways. Um, by I learned to express that in healthy ways now by being transparent and being unattached to the outcomes. And that's really been extremely beneficial in me showing love. Yeah.
How did how did that manifest for you previously when you said, you had some of the shame around like
Mhm.
your desires, sexual desires? Like what how did that show up in its shadow?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest shadows I've had in my life is after spending some time in Germany with the Marine Corps, I met a German woman and I married her. And I married her because I felt a connection to her. She had a very motherly instinct, and my mother wound was pretty deep at the time. So looking back at it, I was picking a mom. I was marrying my mom so she could take care of me. And when we moved back to the United States, her assimilation to the culture was challenging for her, and I didn't have the patience or the understanding of what she was going through to help her. So I said, "Well, you're English. You speak English really well, and you can get around." But there's much more to it. I just wasn't being very conscious. So we had a lot of fights and arguments during that time. And my desire was to be taken care of, to be loved. And I ended up finding that from a man who is twice my age. Um, I ended up having an affair with a man while I was in my marriage. I had an affair with him for a couple of years, and it turned very toxic. It was very controlling. I didn't have enough self-worth to call myself out of it, so I chose to be a victim to it. And he chose to manipulate and extort me. It caused a lot of pain and grief in my life, some really sadness. I was lying to my wife. I was um, traveling around the U.S. There's some fun parts to it, but the emotional stress superseded all of that. Late nights arguing, not being seen by either partner, not feeling respected, not creating any of that myself. That ended up coming to a culmination in 2018, and I went through a divorce, and I stopped talking to that man. But my desire for sexual expression, whether it's men and women, I had a lot of infidelity in that marriage as well. Um, my desire to express my sexuality with both men and women, my desire to create safety in myself, I outsourced it, and I made a big mess. Um, yeah, and then in my relationships following that for the next few years, I continued on with infidelity because it it fueled ego. It also was a place for me to get these desires and needs met when I didn't have an understanding or capability of doing it within the inside the relationship containers. I was agreeing to monogamy whenever it's something that I just didn't want to do. And I thought that I had to do this in order to have a relationship. Who's going to accept me if I'm not going to be in a monogamous relationship? Who's going to love me and trust me and be with me? Those are the questions. Then I finally got to the point. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I love myself. If nobody wants to be with me, that's fine. And as soon as I made those affirmations, Liv came along, threw a wrench in my plan. I fell in love with her. Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that, brother.
absolutely.
What does what does sex mean to you?
Ooh. Sex to me